Let me start with a joke that will represent one of the principal regulatory problems we are facing these days. First regulatory problem we face has to do with language, combined with a powerful imagination. What we are talking about is the question. And as the object is approaching, we say, it's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Superman. It happened the same with cryptocurrency. It's a coin, it's a security, no, it's cryptocurrency. And finally, it's an advisor, it's AI, a robot, no, it's a robo-advisor. As cryptocurrency not necessarily has to be a coin or a security, it's just a token, a robo-advisor does not necessarily have to deal with advising or the Isaac Asimov 3 laws. Reviewing the literature, we have found different definitions that include awesome and futuristic features. If I were the regulator and I will have read some of these definitions, I will have more than one reason in order to ban robo-advisors. The definition we have come up with is simple. No advisors, no artificial intelligence, it's just software. It's just software. It's an algorithm that can provide investment services to an investor, and considering these three notions, the algorithm, the investment service, and the investor, we have done different approaches to the taxonomy and we have studied their nature. Being an algorithm is useful in order to understand the responsibility of each of the players in the business. Thanks to the investment service, we can figure out what are general compliance requirements. And finally, thinking about investor special requirements regarding protection, we can analyze special consequences of the technology. We are going to start analyzing robo-advisors as an algorithm. Could all investment service based on algorithm be considered robo-advisors? The theoretical answer is no. For example, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority considers client-facing tools used by financial professionals as robo-advisors when they incorporate at least following activities: customer profiling, asset allocation, portfolio selection, trade execution, portfolio rebalancing, and tax loss harvesting. But in practice, as we will see, this limit is not clearly defined. Being an algorithm requires of a programmer to be created. In our interconnected world, the role of the programmer is probably the harder concept to define. This figure may range from a person or team that has just downloaded and parameterized an open source code to a complete group of engineers that have developed software during months or years. In addition, we cannot rule out the possibility of having a robot being programmed by another robot. The algorithm will also belong to somebody, who will be the owner of the robo-advisor. For its owner, the robo-advisor is an intangible asset whose book value derives from the investigation and research investment costs. The second relevant feature of a robo-advisor was the service provided to the investor. This service is provided by the user of the robo-advisor. Most of the time, this service is an internet-based service. Regarding the type of service given by the robo-advisor, it is important to distinguish between a robo-advisor that just performs advising services and a robo-advisor that gives a more complete investment service, including, for example, the purchase and sale of financial assets. If the robo-advisor just performs advising services, the user will directly be the investor. While typically, in the second situation, the user will be an investment firm, a banking institution, or an equivalent agent. The user and the owner of the robo-advisor could be identified as the same person or not. Also, it is important to consider that in the case the user is an investment firm or an equivalent figure, all cautions and warnings that should be considered between an investor and the investment firm are a starting point to define the ones to be considered between investors and robo-advisors. If we consider the relation between the user and the investor, and according with investment firms' legal requirements, the service must consider the investor's profile. Therefore, the service given by the robo-advisor must be different depending on the final client profile. This notion leads to a first classification of robo-advisors depending on the step of evolution in terms of features and service between the user and the investor. Each new type or step adds characteristics and service to the previous one, being Robo-Advisor 1.0 the most basic one and Robo-Advisor 4.0 the most complete. Robo-Advisor 1.0 in Robo-Advisor 1.0 there is no difference between the user and the investor. The Robo-Advisor is just a software that helps in the decision-taking procedure. It offers the most suitable single product or portfolio allocation to the client chosen from a list after answering a simple test. The portfolio has to be managed by the investor himself, as there is no bank or investment service company behind, also using their own accounts and managing future adjustment. Robo-Advisor 2.0. The Robo-Advisor is used to know investor's profile through a test that is used to define the risk of the client and match it with the assigned predefined portfolios for such risk. The investment service company is operated by professional human managers, and they are the ones that design predefined portfolios. Robo-Advisor 3.0. The user is also managed by the Robo-Advisor, but under the supervision of human managers. The adjustments and rebalancing are automatically done by algorithms according to the pre-established investment strategies. Professional fund managers oversee the financial control, in some occasions allowing the client to slightly modify their portfolios to individualize them. Robo-Advisor 4.0. The user is full-time operated by the Robo-Advisor, which could offer a sophisticated risk profiling of the client that leads to direct investments via self-learning, artificial intelligence investment algorithms. Robo-advisors could shift between different asset classes based on changing market conditions and individual investment needs such as profit, risk appetite, and liquidity aspects. Monitor and adjust single client portfolios in real time to keep on track with their selected investment strategy. Once analyzed Robo-advisors as an algorithm, we will continue considering the Robo-advisor as an investment service provider. This will help considering all compliance requirements. I will follow the Spanish financial system structure in the presentation, but all things I will talk about match with US financial system, and so I suppose with the Austrian system. First player that appears are the advisors. In Spain are called EAFIs. They are independent financial advisor firms registered with the Spanish National Security Market Commission, CNMV. These firms just can give advising service. They cannot buy or sell on behalf of someone. Then come the investment service companies. These are three types of investment service companies in Spain. There are activities and services that all of them can provide, and there are some limited to a certain type of investment service companies. The first type is a dealer, which can offer all types of investment services. Of note is that these firms are authorized to operate on behalf of clients as well as on their own account. Brokers cannot operate on their own account. They can only execute purchases and sale orders on behalf of their clients. This restriction limits the activities they carry out and the services they can offer. For example, they cannot grant credits or loans to investors. One kind of investment service is portfolio management. This activity, portfolio management, can be carried out by both dealers and brokers, and also by a third type of investment service companies, known as portfolio management companies. These entities are only authorized to manage investment portfolios in accordance in accordance with specific mandates given to them by investors and offer advice to companies and investors. Here appears an interesting player, the online brokers and online dealers. These services consist just in online trading platforms, but perform 100% by software, by algorithms, and the users can program orders, buying and selling orders. Should these platforms be considered as robo-advisors? They match with our definition, and I think it's important to consider them as robots, because they contribute to some of the principal problems associated with these technologies. Investment service companies, together with financial institutions, also known as banks, are the only companies allowed in Spain to buy financial assets for individual investors. If we consider collective investment schemes that could incorporate the use of robo-advisors, we shall consider principally investment funds. Other typically types of collective investment schemes, such as private equity firms or real estate investment trusts, that do not need to use this software in order to get a competitive advantage. All these companies, when giving their investment services, are under the supervision of their National Securities Market Commission, CNMV in Spain case, SIC if we are talking about services given in the States, or FMA here in Austria. Banks, when giving investment services, are also under the supervision of the Securities Market Commission. But regarding banks, we shall not forget that they are banks. And when banking services, when they are doing banking services, they are supervised by their central bank. And also insurance companies. They also use robo-advisors. They operate when they operate in the financial market, and they are not under the National Securities Market Commission supervision. With this general view, we can ask ourselves the question: what compliance requirements apply to these companies in general, and so to robo-advisors in particular? Let's see. General financial markets requirement coming from both national law and European Commission. Also applies specific requirements for each one of the instruments traded, for stocks, options, bonds, derivatives. A complete set of legal requirements applies for each one of the service provider, again coming from national and European regulation. In the case of banks, also we have to consider Basel regulation and central bank's requirements. Then MiFID II, with risk and information requirements. You should know your client, and you should know the product you are trading with. Money laundering laws, data protection requirements, and I can continue for a long time. The correct question is not if robo-advisors fulfill with the law. The correct question is there any human able to fulfill with regulation? And the answer is no. Humans cannot deal with a modern compliance system. It's impossible. This is one important point. Thanks to the robo-advisors, it's easy to fulfill with the law. And the answer to the first question is yes. I don't know if these are good or bad news. Robo-advisors fulfill with the law. Robo-advisor has become to their use a competitive advantage regarding compliance. As law and legal requirements become more complex, robo-advisors become more useful, and also can forecast the future, can place order immediately and don't sleep. But careful. Not by fulfilling the law, we have avoided all problems. Here comes another classification, attending in this case to the degree of independence between the owner and the user of the robo-advisor. We can separate them into three groups that will require of distribution agreements. independent robo-advisors, segregated robo-advisors, and integrated robo-advisors, and a fourth in which robo-advisor will be used only as a tool for other users. Standalone robo-advisors. The robo-advisor plays the role of an independent advisor for the user. A deposit is made at a bank or investment service company chosen by the client or by the advisor, who will be the custodian of the client assets. This robo-advisor will oversee the elaboration of customers' profiles, the construction of portfolios, and the monitoring of the investings. This is the only type of robo-advisor that can provide independent advice according to MiFID II. Segregated robo-advisors. In a banking group or investment service companies, but not integrated with. It is different from the previous one in the level of independence. Here we can distinguish between two scenarios, with or without incentives on the part of the asset distributor, but is not integrated at the bank. Integrated robo-advisor. Part of a wider service branch. It is part of the investment service or the bank's services, who is the depositary. It is not an independent advisor and is fully integrated into the company business model. And then, Robo for advice. Digital advice for human advisors, human users. It is only used as a tool. The consultant. The investment service companies or banks evaluate the investment, and he or she is who take the investment decisions on behalf of their investors, of final investors. The robo-advisor chooses between different portfolios that finally can be accepted or not by the user. This type of robo-advisor does not have to be connected to the service of a bank or investment service company, being the owner of the robo-advisor the one who shares the fees. The independent robo-advisor can directly work as an advisor. The other types of robo-advisor can work for the rest of the players, giving all kinds of investing services to the final investor, or for example, to the managers of an investing fund or to a dealer. In order to finish, we have here some conclusions. We have defined robo-advisors as the algorithm that can provide investment services to an investor. First idea. As an algorithm, we have distinguished between the programmer, the owner, the user, and the investor, and we have made a first classification attending to the different degree of development of the technology. As an investment service provider, we have been talking about the complexity of the financial system by itself, but also combined with its regulation. We have classified robo-advisor attending to the degree of independence. Robo-advisor help with compliance. Thanks to robo-advisors, it's easy to fulfill with the law, but fulfilling with the law does not necessarily mean to do things in the correct way. Finally, representing the relationship between robo-advisors and investors, they represent great challenges. On the one hand, robo-advisors have a great power. They don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't stop, they don't argue. They represent an incredible competitive advantage, consider scale economies, low cost, more tailor-made solutions, more control and more data. But on the other hand, with great power comes great responsibility. The increase of the volatility, the intense use of high-frequency trading, flash crashes or systemic risk are just little examples of how fulfilling the law does not necessarily mean to do things in the correct way. Almost everything is new, and much work remains to be done. We shall learn together. Thanks, muchas gracias, vielen Dank, Dankeschön.